come to the podium and share anything they'd like to bring to the committee, and they have 3 minutes. Do we have it? I don't have any public comment. Is there anyone who wants to address the committee? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to committee business. Does anybody have anything they'd like to bring up before we start our meeting? Okay, now our first topic is item A, approval of the minutes for the November 6, 2023 committee meeting.
Mr. Chair, I move approval of minutes November 6, 2023, as it was submitted.
I will second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we'll now move to item B, which is citywide variable land use control project acceptance. Mr. Mulkey?
Thank you. Chair and committee members, council members, my name is John Mulkey, and I am presenting the, attorney goes, variable land use control project acceptance. Hold on. There we go. So the policy question is, should council accept the citywide land use control project constructed by Northeast Electric LLC as complete? The project authorized, we have within our authorized budget by almost $200,000. The project costs were lower than expected during the course of the project, mainly due to traffic control. They were able to continue the work a lot quicker than they thought they would without using a lot of flagging. So it ended up coming well under budget. We added something back in when we dropped a project, but then it ended up washing out in the end of it. So we're well under budget on the project. And just back around the project, what the project is they have arrows that go over the top of a lane control at the flashing at a signal. It'll say like left turn or right turn only on each lane. But we have some of these that are actually able to change. So one day it may be saying straight, but if we get more traffic and more need to go in a direction, it may be able to go straight and right. So that's what these are able to, looking at the traffic and see what the traffic's like, change the actual direction of flow on that lane to help increase traffic flow through the intersection. So going through that, so the options considered are authorized final acceptance of the citywide variable land use control project constructed by Northeast Electric LLC in the amount of $465,775.55, or do not authorize final acceptance of the citywide variable land use control project and provide direction to staff. And the mayor recommends option 1, and I'm available for questions.
I do. Sure, thank you. Do you anticipate that confusing people? Because if I'm used to going straight, I might come in and just try to go straight.
Right. Well, I think in most cases, there's an option to go straight or turn. Rather, it might eliminate them. They're going to be, it's not like a regular sign, so it's going to be lit signs, and there's going to be advanced signs as well. So we've put up not just one sign at the intersection, but an advanced warning sign with the variable signs as well. So the hope is that they'll see these lights and change, and it won't cause a conflict, because the changes that we're making for them aren't going to make that kind of traffic conflict per se is bad, but we hope that the fact that we're advertising. So if I make a straight, they only have one right now that's working. Now this is because all the physical work is complete, and it also goes with our adaptive control and how they're going to operate. So right now the only one working is the right turn lane on 348th and Pack Highway, I believe. But that one goes from either a straight lane to a straight and a right turn. So really you're just adding an extra double right to that when we have high traffic going northbound on 99.
Okay. Seeing no other questions, do we have a motion?
I just want to make a comment. I
Yes,
just want to say thank you, John and staff, for completing this project under almost $200,000. So appreciate it. So with that, Mr. Chair, I move to forward option 1 to the January 2nd, 2024 consent agenda for approval.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now we'll move to item C, an ordinance adopting the state mandated
So
So where do we? Let's see, where's my codes at?
The wheelchair
Is it,
came
where's it
from.
hiding?
Yeah, it's, I think it's that.
That one there?
Hey, this is Jack. I'm going to be on Zoom for a few minutes till I get
Fire
there.
one.
We got you covered.
All right. Just on the way from the airport right now.
How do I get it bigger?
Yeah, avoid First Avenue.
How do we get that bigger? Right there?
Yep.
Okay. Good evening, Chair Dovey and committee members Tran, and I guess Walsh is late, and Council President Coachmeyer, Deputy Mayor Honda, and City Council members. I'm Scott Sproul, building official. This is a two-part presentation. One will be mine, and then along with South King Fire and Rescue. So the construction codes enforced fall into two categories: state mandated codes and local codes adopted by the jurisdiction. Many state mandated codes are required to be enforced by the city and local ordinances. Cities adopt codes in local level in order to reconcile these codes with the regulatory requirements and establish fees, resolutions, local codes, and permissions that are needed in order to provide enforcement of the building requirements. South King Fire and Rescue is proposing changes to the 2001 International Fire Code. The city may make changes to the building codes only if the requirements are more stringent than the state-adopted codes. The following additional requirements are proposed. The fire grade apparatus road shall be limited and established by the fire official based on a department fire apparatus, the maximum slope of 5%. And the second change would be fire alarm replacement. When required fire alarm systems per IFC that are required fire alarm panel replacements shall meet the current code and adopted by the state, which include the alarm notifications and initiation devices. That is the part, and I will let Scott from South King Fire discuss further with that.
Was that slide 3 you were talking to, or?
Let me see, slide 3 just has a list of the codes. And I was actually off the memorandum, just on the discussion at the bottom. I didn't have that on a slide. Sorry about that.
So there's a PowerPoint up there.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
I just have to find it. How do I minimize this? How to get to it? Where were you at, right there?
We were there. I think that was just yours. There it is. Yep, okay.
Oh, God. Go for it.
Yeah,
The little screen, right here.
yes. Good evening. So I'll give you a little bit of background on the fire alarm panel replacement requirements. The fire alarm panels typically begin to fail after about 15 to 20 years. The fire code has requirements as far as how the fire alarm system is to be installed and repaired, but doesn't state the required full fire alarm replacement in a building when it's already equipped with a fire alarm system. It leaves the interpretation up to the jurisdiction. Older fire alarm systems required only a bell, a horn or horn strobe in corridors for apartments or office buildings, for example. These can be a long distance away from occupants, and some occupants may not hear that the building is in alarm. And delays from evacuating tenants causes more rescue operations from the fire department. So newly constructed buildings and new codes and standards, they do have different audible and visual notification appliances that are more throughout a building, and including sleeping areas, the public accessible and common areas. So the proposal is when a fire alarm panel must be replaced due to failure, The fire alarm system shall meet current code. This would require notification, many horns to be added into sleeping units in common areas in multifamily homes, and then in common areas of buildings. Additional notification would be called out for in office buildings or within a tenant or suite. So the fire alarm panels will fail over time, like any other appliance. The proposal is not to require every building to have a fire alarm system. It's only when they are required. And this change does not apply if the current panel is still working properly. However, if catastrophic failure occurs, the panels will, excuse me, start to show signs of failure 2 to 3 years prior to failure. And it'll give the building owners time to budget for a replacement. Any questions?
Yeah, I've got a couple.
Okay.
To raise my hand.
I'll go first, and then I'll let you guys, sorry.
You might have a couple
I'm
hours
sorry,
anyways.
since I'm the chair, I get to go first. How's that?
Whoops.
How many fire alarm panels do we have in Federal Way?
That I couldn't tell you.
Okay. If, like, we just had to replace our little 2 Hicker things to get in and out of the building. And it seemed like we had to do a major replacement. If somebody had a panel and they have to put the horns and the beepers and all these different things in, what's that gonna cost them? I mean, is the software compatible, or are they gonna have to rip everything out and start over from ground zero? What's the, you say they can save, the building can save the money, but what's it gonna cost, and what's that really look like?
That I can't tell you on the cost either, because it depends on the alarm system, what it's capable of doing. Today's technology, there is going to be a cost with a panel and with upgrade to devices, but there's several variables based on the occupancy type and use. It could be office, it could be a school, could be a multifamily complex, but we don't have all that cost information that goes along with that. That's where the fire alarm installers and designers would have to specify what is available on the market, like any other appliance or device. And then also, there's different installers, and so it's best to get bids from different installers to see that price variable change. So I don't have all those figures, because there's different alarm panel companies that produce those devices, and there's just no way to get an accurate amount for that, so I don't have that information for you right now.
Can you fathom a guess?
No, because I could be way off.
Do other cities do this?
Yes. Yes, my understanding, in this region, South King County, Valley Regional Fire Authority, Puget Sound Regional Fire Authority already have this in place for their current codes. Also, Zone 1 fire departments and Bellevue, Redmond, Kirkland, I know that they have that in their codes as well.
Mr. McDaniel. Your turn.
Thank you. Do you know what, I don't know if you mentioned, I think you might have, what is the average lifetime for one of these panels?
About 15 to 20 years. That's going to vary on the equipment, but that the information was retrieved by just a Google search, and different alarm companies are posting that information on their website. It's not saying that that's exactly when something is going to fail, but they'll start to show signs of that based on their equipment or the technology or what's in place.
Gotcha. And then I will assume that if you mentioned it, that is it every single, like if it's an apartment building, like you said, multifamily, and it's, say, 20, 30 different rooms, is every single apartment going to have one of those audible adapters put into it then?
A mini horn?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
It'd be in the sleeping areas, and it would be, if the living room was used for sleeping, in that location as well. That's pretty standard.
Gotcha. And I take it these are all hardwired?
No, they're not. They
Not?
can be hardwired, or they can be wireless devices.
Oh, wow. And do you know, since the 15 to 20 years, how long have these newer systems been out? Like, we have a lot of multifamily developments around here, so.
Right.
Like, what year did this become pretty common? Where it was like, it wasn't required until just now, it's gonna be retired after this. But like, the new location was just built, I'm assuming they already had it built into it. How, like, for how many years they've been doing this? Has it been 10, 15 years they've been doing it? Or has it been literally within the last 5 to 10 years, maybe?
As far as requiring a full upgrade,
Well, like, people just, when they're building it, they're building for the future, so they're putting them in now, so they don't have to worry about this extremely, I imagine that's gonna be pretty expensive for an apartment building to have to rebuild out this kind of structure.
yeah, the code requires it today to be put in complete. It's just, we're talking about like older complexes or buildings where they didn't have all those features as of today. We're trying to bring them up to
Got it.
current requirements
Got it.
for
I
life
think,
safety.
I think the council member was trying to
The
ask
code was in play then.
exactly at what point the current technology was required for new construction.
This is probably about 3 code cycles ago. Like, I think it started with the '09 International Fire Code.
So probably roughly 2010-ish?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. You talk about the panels failing. Do you do yearly inspections so that there's enough time for a building to replace it before a panel fails and there's an issue?
That is required by the standard to have inspection, testing, maintenance of the fire code, and NFPA 72 standard calls out for annual testing of fire alarm systems, and that's done by third party, not by the fire department. So as long as they're having that done, they're going to get some type of information from the testing agency to let them know the status of their system, if it's getting to end of life and will need to be replaced.
Does that testing company inform the fire department?
Yes. Yeah, they're required to complete a confidence test report, and then it gets submitted to a third-party portal to where the fire department has access to. It's called the compliance engine, where we can identify what occurred during that test, and if there's any discrepancies and things that need to be fixed, so that can be done.
Okay, thank you.
Lydia?
Yeah, so is there a requirement for like large spaces, places of worship, or is there like a number per square foot, I don't know, horns they need to have?
Yes, I mean, for occupancy types, it's specific on where the devices get installed or how they get installed. And for, like for strobes, they do project the light. So there's different levels of the illumination per device, so it can capture the full area. And so those all get designed by the designer and gets reviewed during plan review stage. But, yeah, the audible and visual devices get placed so all occupants would be able to hear or see that the building is an alarm. For example, in this space right here, you'll see the devices around or throughout the building. That's very common, but it is going to be occupancy specific on how they get placed and where. You're welcome.
Council President Kochmar?
Thank you, Chair Dovey. So you're saying that this is a adoption of the state mandated building and construction codes. Is that, it wasn't this year, then it was in 2009 that this was?
I saw it in 2009 when it wasn't state adopted language, it left it up to the jurisdiction. So that's when I was seeing that from my previous location of where that started to come into play based on development and aging buildings and where target hazards are as far as like, you know, fires, injury, loss of life, and what could be done to improve that. That's how that began.
Okay. So this doesn't apply to single-family residential, only multifamily and
Correct.
commercial or school. So, so when you say if it's catastrophic failure, so the third party determines the catastrophic failure? Well, what if the agency or the owner doesn't do anything about it? Do you then fine them?
Well, yeah, we would have to intervene. If it's a required fire alarm system, it's required to be maintained in working order. And so we would require them to have that fixed. And yes, it's the third party that determines if they can either maintain that or repair it back to its functionality. So if they can maintain it, that's fine. It's that if they cannot get it working, then it'll need to be replaced. And that's where we're looking for it to come up to current requirements then.
So I would assume that if a fire occurs in a commercial building or a school or a apartment, and we have not adopted these codes, and we would be partially liable, you know, when you go back into pierce the veil.
I think, Council President, I can address that a little bit. So as Scott stated earlier, there are certain things that we have to adopt as a jurisdiction, and there are certain things that we can adopt, but we don't have to. This is one of those things that we can adopt, but we are not legally required to. So I don't think there would be a very strong case for city liability if we didn't adopt this, given the fact that it's kind of our option whether or not to. If we didn't adopt one of the required ones, that would be a problem.
Thank you.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, just to clarify, so a panel replacement would be just that if it wasn't working. And the older buildings only had really limited, or have really limited notification for all occupants compared to today's requirement when a brand-new system goes in. So what it is that a new panel will be installed, and then that would come along with new devices for those areas where it was deficient in the past. What was the other?
You're saying because the current code doesn't ask for the replacement, just the panel.
Right, current code doesn't ask for the replacement right now. It would just be the panel getting replaced, and right now it's a like for like, if they can. If they can't, then they have to go to the next available option, and what that could be is a little bit more expense, but a panel, let's say it isn't made anymore, they're gonna have to use one that's compatible with the building wiring and other devices that's there, but it would just be the panel. What we're looking for is the panel and new notification to make the building safer moving forward. So that's how it differentiates.
So I have a clarifying question, just so I understand this a little better. If I have a building with a fire panel in it and I meet code today, and something goes wrong with my panel, today, if the vendor of the panel can sell me a new panel, I just put it in and I'm legal with the code, is that correct?
Correct.
And what you're asking, or what this code is asking, if I'm legal today and my panel goes out, if I put a new panel in, I have to add all the additional things in the living spaces or whatever, and improve my panel for some cost more than it is today.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yes,
correct.
yeah, because it's just like replacing say your power panel in your house.
Right.
You're not going to do all the lights in the house, so they're
And-
asking
Yeah.
panel replacement and then all the devices that are in the rooms.
And the city doesn't set the prices of whatever that is, and the fire department it's the panel manufacturers who now all have a huge upside business opportunity because we passed this code, right? I mean, they're the ones who set the price of what it's gonna be.
They do, the manufacturers and the vendors installing, it's correct. Yeah, we don't have any control over the pricing of that.
Because, I mean, my comment is, it seems to me that if the panel's in there and it breaks and I could put a panel in and make my system work, home run. But if I have to go redo my whole building, I kind of wonder why I'd want to be in Federal Way if nobody else does this. And you're saying everybody does this, but can we get documentation on what the other cities do?
Yeah, we can definitely provide that for council, yeah. I just wanted to make one small comment, which is that you said if your system is legal today and it breaks, what I mean by.
Under code.
Yeah, and I just wanted to make the small distinction that it's legally non-conforming currently, because you'd have a panel currently that isn't up to current standard, but it's okay, because when it was put in, it's grandfathered
15
in.
years ago was fine.
Exactly,
And
yeah.
now we're 15 years further down the line, but but I built my building to the standard code of the state and the
Yep.
city and whatever.
This proposal is just essentially to sunset that grandfathering when it needs full replacement.
Right, and these would be, viewed on a case-by-case basis and make sure that they've exhausted other efforts of getting the panel replaced. We're not trying to cause the owners to spend more money, but we are trying to get them having their building up to a safer condition as it was, compared to when it was installed initially. Technology has changed with the fire alarm systems and the devices, similar to like cell phones, how they've changed over the years, or any other appliance. When those older systems can't keep up, or that's when they fail. That's when we're calling for this to happen. Not if they can fix it, then they continue down that path until it doesn't work anymore. That's the difference.
I have one other question, and this is this a time-sensitive amendment that has to be done, or can we get the more information based on what it really costs the fire panel person and what everybody else is doing?
Yes, there are kind of two aspects to this ordinance, one of which is more time sensitive and the other of which is not as time sensitive. The part that is time sensitive is adopting all of the codes that we're required to adopt on that 3-year cycle that was described. This particular thing that we're discussing right now, which is the additional replacement requirement, that is not as time sensitive because it's not a requirement. That's something that we could, if council wanted to, consider further and take more time considering.
I mean, could we, maybe I'm the only one that thinks this way, but could we pass the time sensitive tonight if we decide we want to, and then put this back on the Committee of Land Use in 1st of January where we get the right information?
Yeah, we could definitely move to forward the ordinance without the specific provisions relating to fire alarm panel replacement to first reading. That's what that motion would be.
Okay. Lydia?
Yeah, may I ask, what's your concern again?
What's that?
Your concern?
Well, my concern is this. We have a tremendous amount of fire alarm, I'm assuming in the city, and the sizable investment people have put into it, and we don't know when they're gonna go, the panel's gonna go bad or not go bad. But if it goes bad with today, they may have to replace their whole system. And is that 100,000? Is that 50,000? Is that 10,000? I mean, if the mall had to redo their fire alarms, would they have to do the whole mall?
No, well,
I mean, yeah,
the
those are
mall, the mall already has a lot of the audible visual devices compared to like a multifamily that doesn't, for example. So maybe it would be a few devices in the mall. And the other aspect too is if there's portions of the building that are vacant or they're going to be going under tenant improvement, that can be done at that time. So it's not like it all has to be done all at once. We can allow, phasing of devices as well. But in some situations, it would be for a whole building, and others, no, it wouldn't, because like the mall already has a lot of these devices, which meets current, code in comparison.
I have a question.
Yes, Deputy Mayor Honda.
Thank you. If a building is required to have a panel now, and the panel fails, they need to replace it, period, correct?
Yes, if it can't be maintained in working order, it would need to be replaced with a new one.
Which is gonna cost money,
Yes,
one way or another. But they wouldn't be able to occupy the building if they didn't replace the panel.
they would be on fire watch. If they're going to occupy the building, it's either evacuate the building or they're going to have a fire watch until the system is restored.
That's when you walk around the building once an hour?
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
yep.
Councilmember McDaniel?
Yeah, my comment's gonna be kind of to your consideration. The one issue that I have on this one, without having, like I said, more information, is the apartments that I'm concerned about that are gonna get hit with this one are gonna be the older ones, which are the cheaper rents, and as soon as you require this on an older building, I don't see that being an easy one, which means those rents are gonna hit the renters. I mean, the rents are gonna increase to cover these, and I don't see this being a cheap fix for some of those guys. So I'd like to personally hold off a little longer to get the information, not disagreeing with going forward with it. I'd just like to have a little bit more information to digest this, because I know who's going to get hit. It's not going to be the new companies, it's not going to be these nice new buildings, it's going to be the old ones that have semi-reasonable rents in Federated right now, and that's my concern at the moment.
Understood.
Council President Colchmar?
So, thank you. If we hold off until after the first of the year, when do you expect to start doing your fire inspections?
Well, we do annual fire safety inspections now. So but we verify that their system is getting tested. We don't test that. That's third party that comes in and does that. So we do fire safety inspections on all occupancies.
So I was trying to weigh what because I wouldn't want anybody to be hurt, but the difference between, waiting a month or so, whether that would be any kind of because first of all, you have to do the inspection, it has to go through the process and.
Yeah, so our inspections, they're not just January to January, for example. I mean, they are continuous as we,
Right.
can get them done. And with 3 people doing those, there's more inspections that can be completed in a year's time that we've already found. So it's going to run into the new year before they can catch up.
Sure, that's what I was thinking. It probably
So-
wouldn't make that much of a difference, I wouldn't think. Because even if you have a third party doing it and they get back to you and you get back to the owner, there's a certain amount of time that transpires there.
Yes, there is, yeah.
Yeah, and Christmas is coming in and New Year and,
And, based on the hazard that is identified, I mean, they're giving time to correct, whatever the hazard
and
is.
notice, or being given notice, yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
and we take that in consideration when it comes to putting in a new system. There's a time frame where they have to have it, a designer come out, identify what they need. They have to submit for permit, it has to go through review, it has to get installed, get
Yeah.
inspected, so it doesn't happen really
Really
quickly.
quickly, yeah, thank you.
Hey, I have a comment.
Oh,
Can you hear me?
go right ahead, Jack.
Yeah, I had my hand up, so, okay. As I see it, obviously, safety is of paramount importance, but also, we need to, as Councilmember McDaniel was saying, this is going to hit the hardest to some of those who can least afford it, because anything that goes to any improvements, the costs are passed on, and need to be passed on. One of the things that I think that we need to do, as you've already implied, I think that we need to find out just what the kind of costs it actually is. Whether it's a full retrofit, it's a $5,000 or $100,000 cost, and then also some stats on how much it does improve the safety. With having the additional alarm system. I mean, is it statistically, is it actually improving safety? Are lives being saved, or is it just an expense that really isn't accomplishing a whole lot? So I think that the cost and whether it's actually accomplishing what its purpose is, we need to take a look at.
Lydia, do you have a question?
I think both Paul and Jack kind of addressed what I wanted to say, so.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's about safety, I think if this is a safety issue, then I would hate for us to put it off. But at the same time, I completely agree with both Jack and Paul are saying in terms of how the cost is gonna go down to the renters. So we need to balance that, but I think if safety is really an issue, then we have to also consider that. Because sometimes those are the loopholes that get people in unsafe environment. Thank you.
Paul?
Quick follow-up. This year, if we would have had this passed, how many locations or how many full systems would have had to been replaced? Do you guys have a ballpark figure of how many would have had to have this replacement? Is it a lot or just a couple here or there, like maybe 3 or 4 a year, or are we talking like dozens a year?
I know of 4
4.
right now, since March.
Are they commercial, residential, like
Residential multifamily.
how big and how old are the buildings? Just curiosity.
That I don't know
Okay.
on those yet.
I'm curious to know if you have four, I mean, those four would be the ones I'd want to know, just so it could give us the understanding of what we're looking at in the future then.
Correct.
Awesome, thank you.
I just wanted to note for council that just due to the scheduling near the holidays, this item would be forwarded to the January council meeting for first reading. So if you don't want to bifurcate this ordinance into the required pieces and then this piece that we're talking about, you could also, I'm sure we could get you that information prior to the January council meeting, and you could consider it on first reading and direct amendments to the ordinance if you wanted
I'm
to.
okay with that if you want. Since I'm okay if we have a motion to move it forward, but know that there's probably going to be a lot of questions, at least number-wise. Because if safety, we want to do, but if it's going to put these places out of business and raise the rent by 15% for the people in these apartments, or 5% or whatever, we need to know that before we pass it.
Well, I can let you know right now, it is all about life safety. The whole reason for the fire alarm system is to identify a hazardous condition, and then alert the occupants of the building simultaneously. And with the older buildings, those devices were spread out, and not everybody can either hear the alarm or see the alarm with a visual device. Some of them just have a bell, and somebody right by the bell might hear it. Somebody way down at the other end of the building may not. And that just increases the hazard in rescue for fire department when they arrive. The idea is to pull up and expect the building occupants to be out of the building in a way as soon as they hear that. So it's all about life safety. That's their job. The fire alarm system, that's what it's supposed to do. But back when they were installed, the code requirements didn't require what they do today. And that's why we're trying to bring them up to the current standards.
Okay. Do you have a motion?
So, go ahead, Jack.
You go ahead. You're right there to be able to read it.
I'm just about ready to make the motion.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Okay.
So, I move to forward the proposed ordinance to the first reading on January 2nd, 2024.
I second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you very much. And who's going to supply the information at our council meeting? Will you have the numbers and the costs and?
Yeah, we'll try and get that information, and myself or the fire marshal, we'll have
Great, thank you,
a little bit more information for you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're moving on to item D, Middle Housing Grant and Interlocal Agreement.
Hi, good evening, Chair Dovey, Member Tran, Member Walsh, Deputy Mayor Honda, Council President Kochmar, and the rest of the council. I'm Janie Skatson, and I'm here to present a middle housing grant acceptance and interlocal agreement with the Department of Commerce. Okay, great. So the policy question is, should the city of Federal Way accept a $75,000 grant to implement the middle housing in compliance with House Bill 1110 and authorize the mayor to execute an interlocal agreement with the Washington State Department of Commerce? The financial impacts. The city would accept a $75,000 grant for middle housing from the Washington State Department of Commerce. There is no local match requirement for accepting this grant, and this is work that needs to be done otherwise, whether it's grant funded or not. This is in response to House Bill 1110, also known as the Middle Housing Bill, that requires compliance by June of 2025. 6 months after the adoption of the comp plan. So just a little for context, on the screen here is a zoning map of the city. Everything in yellow and orange are our residential zones, or zones primarily zoned for residential uses. That's kind of how they refer to them in this bill. And on the left is a table of each of our zones and the allowed uses, the permitted uses. So as you can see, there's a lot of red and a little green. The green primarily in our multifamily zone, allowing those typologies for missing middle or middle housing, which is like attached dwelling units from duplexes all the way to townhouses or sixplexes. In summary, House Bill 1110 requires allowing up to 4 dwelling units per acre among these single-family zones, and these zones primarily for residential uses, unless our zoning allows for higher densities, like along Pack Highway, we allow for much higher density than 4 dwelling units per acre, or in our city center core, in our BC zone, we allow for a much higher density than that. And if this is an area within a quarter-mile walking distance of a transit station, allowing up to 6 dwelling units per acre. And then even if you're without, farther from a quarter acre from transit, but willing to reserve 2 units for affordable rents, you can have up to 6 dwelling units on your lot. The mayor's recommendation is to accept the $75,000 middle housing grant and authorize the mayor to execute the interlocal agreement with the Washington State Department of Commerce. Any questions?
Council President Kutzmer?
I was just wondering, what would the 75,000 be used for?
So, yeah, of course.
Your work?
The money, some of it will go to funding our Engage Federal Way website that we will be using for engaging with the public on middle housing. So topics related to these different housing types and how to best accommodate that new style of growth in the city. So community engagement efforts also includes covering staff time, non-virtual engagement, so things that we do in public, like hosting focus groups. I'm trying to think. I don't have the actual scope in front of me, but I think also like staff time and preparing for presentations and writing ordinances and drafting code.
Thank you.
I have one question for you. With the passage of House Bill 110, right?
1110.
Whatever the number is,
Okay.
three ones and a zero.
Okay.
Could somebody right now come to Federal Way with our zoning, and as long as they're a quarter mile from transportation, put 6 units on that today?
No.
No.
No, that would only happen if we don't update our code or by June of 2025. That's when the state code then supersedes our local code if we don't comply. That's why we want to do it ourselves
Okay.
and do it in a way that we
Okay.
like.
So if somebody, I just wanted some clarification to understand.
Sure.
So if somebody came in today and they had a lot that they wanted to put 6 units on because they wanted to put 2 affordable and 4 non-affordable, or whatever, market rate, that's
Sure.
the word I was looking for.
Sure.
They could do that, they couldn't do that today.
It would depend on the zoning. So like if it was zoned multifamily, probably.
Probably.
It's because it allows a higher density. If it was, if those housing units were attached, like townhouses or duplex
Yeah.
or triplex, going back to my slide here, it wouldn't be allowed in any of the red.
Only in the
Only in the-
5,000.
But there's like a caveat because our regulations require that you still need to meet the minimum lot size per each unit. So there's not a lot of land or there's not a lot of zoned lots that are RS5
Yeah.
that are 5 times 6, 30,000 square feet.
Yeah,
So you can't get a 6-plex.
Okay, so this grant will help us do the planning for when that becomes actual state law in 2025.
Yeah,
Got it. Okay, thank you.
of course.
Makes the unfunded mandate a slightly funded mandate.
That's like a drop in the bucket. So, Cheney, so currently, if I wanted to put a 6-plex on my lot, which is, it's 3/4 of an acre, so I would not be able to, it's not zoned that way right now. I would have to come in and apply for a rezone. But is that something you're going to do in our city under this grant? You're going to go through the city and rezone?
We're going to talk about changing, so like how our zoning works. We have like 9 zoning districts, and so that's what the colors on the maps represent. And then in our zoning, like our Federal Way Revised Code, it outlines what are the allowed uses and like, for example, the allowed density or the allowed typologies in those zones. So we might not be rezoning our RS 96, which talks about a 9,600 square foot minimum lot size, but instead of only allowing 1 detached dwelling unit there, we would maybe amend the code and change it to allowing up to 6 units. But that's one way we could handle it. Some of this might be, let's change the way we zone. Maybe our zoning districts is kind of archaic, and it's time to rethink how we regulate housing and how we regulate residential in the city. So it could result in the city and us proposing maybe a revamp of our zoning code, Federal Way Revised Code, and/or changes to our zoning map, likely both.
You know, that would be, some people would consider that to be beneficial because that would make their property more valuable, I would assume. But, you know, I think what we're not considering in all of this is that what's really going to control it is the availability of sewers, whether or not because you can zone all you want, but if the sewers aren't available, it's not going to go on the.
I think that's why it's so important to be planning for it. Otherwise, if we don't think about where is there capacity for this growth, because there's other restrictions outside of what our zoning map and our development regulations have, or regulate in terms of where housing can be built. So it's not like all this yellow and orange is going to allow sixplexes, because there's streams and there's wetlands and there's other provisions that protect our critical areas that aren't going to be, like don't add capacity for this housing type. Also, the existing, so something, I don't know if it's unique, but something worth noting in House Bill 1110 is it doesn't change what the existing HOA covenants say. There's a note on the face of the plat that says these lots will not have duplexes or attached dwelling units. This doesn't supersede that. So
We
there's
have
going to be
a-
a really intense analysis of looking at all the plats of the city and see where there aren't restrictions preventing House Bill 1110 typology middle housing.
We have
Council
a lot of
President.
property in Federal Way that's not under HOA covenants, but are you going to be working with the sewer district? Because a lot of times the sewer district is just waiting for somebody to come in and apply to have that sewer line extended. So, in other words, in order to provide for a denser zoning within the city limits, you'd probably want to work with the sewer district about working in conjunction with whatever their planning is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you.
And Council President, not that this will completely allay your concerns about the on-site septic systems, but there are actually provisions in the bill that allow for potentially some exceptions to the density requirement and/or extended timelines for meeting the density requirement for portions of cities that are documented to be largely on on-site septic. So there is actually some consideration in the bill. It's not great, but there's some at least that will allow us to shape things in Federal Way to ease the burden on the areas that are on-site septics.
Okay, no, I don't see any other questions. Do I have a motion? You get to make,
Yeah, I can do it. Mr. Chair, I move to forward the middle housing grant and associate interlocal agreement with the Washington State Department of Commerce to the January 2nd, 2024 consent agenda for approval.
I second the motion.
all in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you, Cheney.
Thanks.
Okay, we're gonna now talk about licensing permanent supportive housing and transitional housing and emergency housing shelter. Keith?
Good evening, Chair Dovey. Committee members Tran and Walsh, welcome, Councilmember Walsh. Glad you made it here safely. Council President Kochmar, Deputy Mayor Honda, and council members. So this evening, we're going to talk about proposed code amendments to the licensing provisions for permanent supportive housing, emergency housing, and shelter. Assuming I can, there we go. So the policy question in front of the City Council is, should the City Council amend Federal Way Revised Code, Title 12, to provide code clarifications relating to emergency shelters that do not accommodate overnight residents? I'll explain that in a second. So the background. With House Bill 1220, we're going to continue to refer to obsolete state statutes. We had to revise our codes in 2021 for both permanent supportive housing and emergency housing and shelter. When we brought those ordinances to the City Council expressed a desire for licensing requirements to also be added. So we added licensing provisions in January of 2022. And as much as we think we are always great code writers and think of every possible scenario that might be applicable, we always don't think of everything, and this would be the case here. So we basically, as we wrote the licensing requirements, we thought about the extended stay, we thought about the Red Lion, and we basically thought that, you know, all of these facilities would have residents, overnight residents staying in them. And obviously, that's not exactly the case. So right now, and as we went through determining whether or not, for example, the day center was an emergency shelter, we decided yes, it was, and they don't have overnight residents, they have guests, right? And so it created this situation where we needed to do some interpretations on our code. And so what we're bringing forward this evening is really to clarify that certain facilities that have residents, certain portions apply, like 070, which is the standards of safety and operation. And then for those that don't have overnight residents, the standards of conduct, which is 080 of 1235, apply. And so really this is, I always hate to say this is housekeeping, but this code amendment is really housekeeping, clarifying that overnight, or that emergency shelters could be those that include overnight residents and those that really just are there for daytime use. So the mayor's recommendation is to forward the proposed ordinance to the first reading on January 2nd, 2024. And I'm here for any questions you might have.
I don't see anyone with a question. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move to forward the proposed ordinance to the first reading on January 2nd, 2024.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Say
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all.
Okay, we're going to item F, overview of street vacation. They're gonna have cruise ships there, or?
On vacation somewhere warm. Well, dinner, I guess.
While EJ is pulling that up, my apologies on getting here physically late. I was picking my wife up at the airport. Her flight actually came in early, but it was more than an hour getting the bags. And so I think that some of the Alaska Airlines baggage claim people are dreaming about Hawaii a little bit too much right now with the, so.
Good evening, Council. For the record, my name is EJ Walsh. I'm the Public Works Director. Tonight, there's 2 items on the agenda related to the vacation of streets, and to provide a little bit of separation on the process, I'm going to do the first one, and then Cole and the applicant's going to do the second one. So as I'm assuming everyone's aware, the city has a process regarding when we receive a request to vacate a city street, be that opened or unopened. So that was last majorly visited in 2020 by the City Council. And prior to that, you know, the code had been in place since the adoption of the original city code and I believe 1993 was when this was included. So tonight, I'm just going to cover the process of what is required as far as the street vacation goes and answer any questions on that in advance of the applicant talking about their specific request, just to make sure we're all playing with the same deck of cards, if this advances. So this is informational only, as I just mentioned. And these are the things we're going to go through and cover tonight, is just a review of what right-of-way property actually is, the city's requirements, and then review what the public trust doctrine is about in state law, and then what the city requires as part of the public trust analysis and public benefit analysis. And then lastly, cover under both our code and city, within the city as well as and under the state law, what city council's responsibilities around vacating a street is. So right away as property. So before we dive too far into this, it's important to know that a street right-of-way is unique from every other type of property, be that your residential house, commercial property. Those are typically called fee simple lots where you actually hold a deed. They're your properties. It's different than leased property. It's different than every other type of property under Washington state law. And that the fundamental difference is that a right-of-way does not have a traditional owner. It does not, there is no deed that goes with it. Instead of that, the governing agency or governing body, if it's in the city, it would be us. If it's a washed-out right-of-way, it would be the state, is responsible for holding the right-of-way on behalf of the public. And it's nuanced, but there's a fundamental difference there between that and like a city park where we own a fee simple parcel. So instead of it being solely as a city's decision to just surplus a city park because we own the parcel, so assuming there's not some other grant requirements, the city council is acting in the trust of the public. So you are essentially selling a public asset as opposed to an asset that the city owns on behalf of the public. And why that's important, I'll come back up in a second. So the last is that vacation is a legislative act, which means it comes to you, and it cannot be delegated. So land use approval, you can delegate to the hearing examiner, you can give staff authority. You cannot do that with vacating right-of-way. You actually can do that and have done that with the sale of fee simple or the acquisition of fee simple to the mayor or to staff. Right-of-way has to be the council under state law. So the vacation process is guided by RCW 3579 and then city code as well. And then third, we have city administrative policies for vacation. No individual company or group has a legal right to acquire or develop a right-of-way. There's no vesting in state law. There's no vesting in city code. There is no, I've had this here for a certain number of years, therefore it is mine. Under state or city requirements. And the important part, and you're going to see this theme throughout this, is the approval of a vacation is relinquishment of the rights of the public. What that means is that the city council is electing, if they proceed, to make a choice to restrict public movement. And that is where the fundamental difference between access in the case of, and I'm going to use the same example, and frankly, we could apply it to any piece of property that the city owns, but I'm going to stick with a park just for ease of conversation. As opposed to a park where we just say it's not a park anymore, a right-of-way, we are choosing to restrict access to the public. So the requirements under our code and state law is that the onus to demonstrate compliance is on the petitioner. So it's not on staff, it's not on city council. The public trust doctrine forms the foundation of the city's review, and we do that through a public trust analysis and a public trust benefit. And all of this is documented in code and in those administrative policies. So the process is intentionally, because we are acting on behalf of the public and restricting movement, the process is intentionally designed to be very methodical, and it takes some time to get through it. So there's the pre-petition act and set of requirements, and that is where this application is today. Then there's the formal petition process, and then once the petition is done, then an actual application gets submitted. Staff reviews it. Most of the time, this is set up, the staff recommendation portion, we have to send it out to every agency that's impacted. So that includes Lake Haven, PSC, the school district, Metro, Tacoma, on and on and on. This staff recommendation process is somewhat labor intensive, and it also is time consuming. Then it comes back to council for review and conditional approval if that's the desire of council. The conditional approval does have a number of things that go with it. So be that title, be that the sale of property, be that physical construction. Once all of those conditions are met, then it comes back to council for the third time for the actual final vacation ordinance. So where we are relative to tonight's presentation that you're going to hear is the star in the pre-petition activity. So no action at this point has occurred on this application. So the application components, when we get to that phase, this is a list of the items that are required to be submitted as part of it. You can see it's somewhat extensive. And the goal of this is to provide a full picture to the community of what is actually being proposed. So the public trust doctrine, and this is the heart of the vacation process, it evaluates the impacts on the public through quantifiable areas. So those are defined as circulation, access, utilities, free speech, public assembly, open space, light and air views, and land use in urban form. Within the administrative policies, each one of these is documented as to what exactly that means and what the applicant has to do to show compliance with that. And at the end of the day, under state law, council may only approve vacations when it is in the public's best interest. So what that means is the burden of proof is on the applicant to demonstrate that they are increasing each one of these criteria to the city and city council satisfaction for the public prior to the vacation being approved. So the public trust analysis, this is how the applicant actually moves through the public trust doctrine. Each one of these may or may not, depending on the complexity of the vacation request as well as the underlying use and things that are there, may require documentation, studies, coordination with other agencies like Lake Haven, PSC, et cetera. And then if any of these areas are not met, the vacation is not approved. Council, since this is legislative, can also place conditions on the approval of any one of those areas at their discretion. So the public benefit analysis, and this is the second of the two prongs, there has to be a public benefit that's greater than the vacation. So the public benefit analysis is the applicant's demonstration of how that is occurring, of what is the public getting in exchange for the vacation. And they need to, and you can see in that second bullet that courts have required that in each vacation there shall be an element of public use or benefit, and it cannot be granted solely for the private use or benefit of an individual or company. So what that means is there has to be a tangible public benefit associated with any vacation request. Again, what that is defined in more detail. That can be a physical public benefit, so that can be dedication of property. It can be something like public art, view corridors, construction of trails. It can be something that's programmatic, so that may be any sort of community-style program that goes on forever. It can also be real property, so it can be an offset, and it can be payment of funds where there is a transportation project on the city's existing capital plan that would offset the loss. So the city council's review and responsibilities, again, like I said, this is similar to land use in the fact that they both deal with real estate, but it's very different than the land use process holistically that most citizens, most council is more used to dealing with. So after the technical review at the end of the process, there is a public hearing, and the council is charged with considering the public comments, recommendations from city departments, fire, school district, and any other utilities and/or agencies that the council wants staff to solicit input from. Ultimately determining if the right-of-way may be needed for future public use, and then determining if conditions should be applied. As part of those considerations, again, the city is the trustee and guardian of the right-of-way. We are not an underlying property owner. So when we elect to vacate a right-of-way as a city, we are doing so on behalf of the public. So we need to make sure and ensure to the residents and any other users of the right-of-way that this is in their best interest. And then the city's default position, which is adopted, is right-of-ways will be retained unless it can be shown that they are not needed and that there are no negative impacts. And then the last bullet is the one where the conditions typically come in. So as part of the vacation, council must publicly declare that there is more public benefit to vacating the right-of-way than there is to retaining it. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. And then, like I said at the beginning, the next agenda item is the specific, and this was kind of just a primer to go over, again, since it has been a number of years since we've discussed this topic with council, just to kind of reset the stage on what everyone's roles and responsibilities around this are and just outline the process. So I am happy to answer any questions on that. And then for the actual vacation request, we'll let the next agenda item stand on its own.
Councilmember McDaniel?
Yeah, a lot of information, so I'm going to ask some blunt ones just to see
Sure.
if I understood it correctly. So we're talking about right-of-way. You mentioned a trust. Is this a legal trust, like the legal definition of a trust?
No, that's a slightly different use of the word. That this is similar, actually. I'll step back there and say it's somewhat similar, but this is more like we're holding it in trust for somebody else.
Okay. So it's not literally, the parcel is not legally underneath of a trust?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And then the second one, is every right-of-way an independent, standalone parcel?
No.
What's
So
that
every
mean?
right-of-way within the city, if you look at the King County Recorder of Deeds or the King County, like IMAP, the King County's parcel viewer, all right-of-ways that are operated by the city of Federal Way are considered one parcel. And then all parcels operated by WashDOT within King County are one parcel, and on one, each agency to their own end on that.
Gotcha. That might answer my next question. So all of the right-of-ways are underneath of the one trust that we then govern, right?
Correct.
Okay. Now, the last one's kind of, I think you've answered, I was going to ask anyways. So all we're looking at doing is, when this comes up, is determining if the value to the public is going to be changed, if we're, changing the public's usage of that right-of-way? But
So
the ownership stays under trust, we just determine
No,
what...
so ultimately with a vacation, you are doing a lot more than that. You are saying that the public has no long-term benefit of retaining the right-of-way and/or the value of vacating the right-of-way is greater. That then converts the right-of-way from right-of-way to private property. In this case, in the case you're about to hear about, the property owner is requesting they be allowed to purchase that private parcel.
So then it pulls out of the trust at that point, and the
Correct.
ownership does change, so this is...
Correct.
Oh, wow.
And the public would have no further use of that area.
Okay, so this is actually a selling of...
It's not technically a sale, but yes, think of it that way.
Yeah, it extinguishes the right-of-way and makes it private property. So the right-of-way goes away, and it's just becomes private property.
But to be very clear, there's no decision tonight.
Yeah, understood. I just wanted to
Okay.
understand.
Just to, fair, just to make sure you and I are on the same page there.
Cracking. Thank you.
Lydia?
Yeah, so you asked my question again, Paul, but to then add to that, my one question was the right-of-way with WashDOT. That even, I know it's not part of this conversation.
Sure.
But do we have any say when it comes to their right-of-way?
No. No, they operate their right of way just like we operate ours.
Okay, and then my other question is, once this right-of-way is vacated, then we have, that's it, it's done forever, correct? We can't take it back, of course.
So, I mean, in theory, the city could condemn it again in the future. So the city retains condemnation authority citywide. So it is no longer the public's property. It would at that point be private property. That being said, under state law, our code, we do have condemnation authority. So if there was a public need and purpose and the city elected to go through the condemnation hearing process, we, in theory, could condemn it back.
So is there a timeline for that then?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think, I don't see any other questions, so I guess we'll move to,
You can ask under yours.
I'm, question, if, would we do that?
I think he's presenting, so I think we can
Yeah.
just handle as part of his.
Okay. Let's move on to item G, Marine View Drive street vacation. Now that we've been schooled a little bit, now we get to apply it to, to think some more. And this is informational only also.
I'll do this too, then.
Good evening. He's amazingly tall. Good evening, Chairman Dovey, members of the committee, Deputy Mayor Honda, Council President Kochmar, members of the council. For the record, I am Cole Elliott. I am the Development Services Manager. And I will be introducing the Marine View Drive vacation. A little bit of background on it. The administrative street vacation policies, which EJ just went over, it requires that the Land Use and Transportation Committee be informed on potential street vacations. That's what we're here to do solely tonight. In 2012, a single-family residence was mistakenly constructed on a portion of unopened Marine View Drive. The house is addressed off of 28th Street Avenue Southwest and is located at what will be the opened right-of-way entrance to the Poverty Bay Park. Here is kind of a rough outline of the roadways that we're talking about, and I have a little bit better one to show. This one shows you kind of the impact of what happened. So with that, I'm here to answer any questions that I can, and then I will be bringing up Chuck Sunsmo to present on behalf of the applicant and inform you. Now, any questions?
Could you go back to the very first map or the
Sure.
colored?
That one?
Yeah, so my question is, the colored part, which is aqua blue or whatever it is, those are the private property locations?
Correct. Through this.
And then the green that goes into the Poverty Day Park, that's the right-of-way?
That is the current right-of-way being discussed or being informed about, yes.
And is there another right-of-way that, where the blue line is, or is that that's a road also?
That is a road, and those are actually just utilities that exist within that road. We used just the city's GIS system to
So-
put this together for you.
And for information, so does this piece of property go into two different right-of-ways then?
No, sir.
Okay, just one?
It's only located within the Marine View Drive
Okay.
right-of-way.
Well, what is the, what's the intersection there?
28th Avenue and Marine View Drive, unopened right-of-way, so you wouldn't even know Marine View Drive is there.
I see.
Let's see. So, Marine View Drive, so 28th Avenue South. And,
28th Avenue Southwest,
oh,
sir.
28th Avenue
Sorry.
Southwest, rather.
Yeah.
And 304th is the,
About 300 block of it, but 304th is not actually in here. The closest actual road that you might know is Dash Point Road in the lower left on this picture. The treatment plant is in the low left corner of the picture.
oh, okay,
The
all right,
Lake Haven
now.
Treatment Plant on Dash Point Road. Does that help you kind of locate where it is?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's,
Can I ask when this comes to us for a decision, can you actually have the maps in the packet so we can see?
There will be, yes.
Thank you. Can I ask a question while he's?
Yeah, go right ahead.
So how, when this was permitted in 2012, how did it get permitted? What was the mistake? Who made the mistake?
There was an error during construction, and I can't fully attest to this because myself, E.J. Walsh, none of us were actually employed at the time. There was an error in what was laid out by the surveyor that was used. He designated the street center line rather than the edge of the property line, and the contractor went off of that.
That's, yeah, very interesting that such a large mistake could have been made.
And then you have to ask about inspection, because they would have had to inspect.
Chair, this is probably a good time to let the applicant make their presentation, because I think they're probably going to cover a lot of this, and
Thank you.
Okay.
I think we're all sticking around for questions, so I think we might want to hear from the applicant first, if that's agreeable.
Could you actually, I want the map, I just want to make sure I know what I'm looking at. I'm still confused on that. Could you pull the map back up and put the mouse, is it the house where it's cut the blue and the non-blue part? The one picture before that?
Okay, sure.
And I'm assuming it's that little part of the house and the driveway that's,
The house and driveway are not in the aqua blue on this one.
correct.
And what you see is the current driveway.
Yep.
And then you'll see a portion of the house itself is within the unopened right-of-way.
So it's that open spot right there, this is what I'm looking at, right?
Yeah, it
Okay.
sweeps, it's on the northern edge of that.
Okay, just want to make sure I understood.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. Let's see.
And then one other question, EJ. This process, this is informational only, the first time we've seen this. Is this like months and months process, or?
So a lot of it depends on the completeness of the application, how many utilities are involved. I think in the beginning of the administrative manual, it says, I'm drawing blank on if it's 12 to 18 months to get through this, or 18 to 24. But it's not short.
So one last question, since 2012, when this was built? Is that when I think I saw that 2012?
That's when it was permitted, yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. So has it been taxed incorrectly for all that time? I mean, property tax and all those things, or, I mean, there's a lot.
I would have to get back to you on that one.
Yeah, I'm just curious.
Yeah.
It looks like the surveyor used the wrong monument, but anyway.
And the applicant may be responding to this, but I mean, how did it come to light now? I mean, what issues?
It's been known, and actually the process has been started twice prior, but it has never come to the point where we've brought it before council.
Okay. Well, looks like there's a gentleman there with a bunch of maps and likes to take the stand. Is that where we're at?
Yes, sir, we are.
Okay. We'll take it to the
Actually,
next
Chuck,
step.
if you want to step up here, a lot of the PowerPoint's already here, so if you just want to flip through.
Probably pass on some of that tonight.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Chuck Sunsmo. I'm a land use consultant and a land developer. Also, sit on the planning commission for Pierce County. So I see these things come in and give a recommendation to our council to pass them or not to pass them. This is an unusual one, I have to say. And usually we see them, we don't see encroachments like this on public property because there's a planning process where we have inspections and that type of thing. And usually we have a site plan and the inspectors are really good at their job. This one, however, happened during the bottom of the recession. I mean, it was a time where there was not a lot of staff. I don't know about the city of Federal Way, but I do know that many municipalities that I deal in as a land developer and also as a consultant, some of the counties and things had just a skeleton staff. So I don't really know how this goes. Sometimes it wasn't malicious, that's for sure. It was just an accident that I guess after the concrete was poured, it was discovered. And
now they're coming to deal with it. So anyway, what I have is, if I can approach this, I want to give you a map that I just kind of put this together at the last minute because I was having a hard time myself with the PowerPoint and that kind of thing.
So this was discovered before the house was built?
No, this was, the house was permitted. The foundation was laid. The inspection was made. All the inspections have been done. There's been a certificate of occupancy issued for the house from the city. So it's something where it was kind of a big oops is what it looked like
Okay.
to me.
Your statement that your prior statement made me wonder if it,
Well, maybe I don't know about the specifics of the building department for the city. I don't know what their requirements are. I know if you were in Texas, you have to have a legal survey before you could pour in concrete, or you could set any pins, that type of thing. So, but in many. Sure, sure. Sure. In many municipalities, a survey of the property prior to construction is not required. I don't know, maybe the city attorney knows about that. I have no idea what it's like. I haven't had a chance to take a look at it. I just got this weekend. So had a chance to take a look at it. My first question, was it malicious? You know, because if it was, I'm out. But it wasn't. It was an accident that happened, and now there's some really heavy lifting that has to go on in order to fix it. And one of the things from my perspective as a developer is when we take a look at it, because this is part of this is built on public trust land, is that what's the cost to pick the house up and move the house? I mean, is it less than what the impacts would be for them to, let's say, provide compensation to the public for this particular encroachment? The next thing is there circulation? And after talking with Mr. Elliott here, we found out that a 50-foot easement, 50-foot right-of-way would actually provide the required access, ingress, and parking, sidewalk for pedestrian pathway, bike trail, that kind of thing, that 50-foot would actually work. So what the applicant is asking for tonight is just a 30-foot section of that property be deeded back to them so that they can have a fee simple lot and not be encroaching on the right-of-way. So I guess my question is, for you folks tonight, for the council, is does this proposal of a 50-foot right-of-way over the 80-foot right-of-way that's there now, and is there some kind of compensation that we could do to provide for the public trust for this property? And at this point, I don't have an answer because I don't know what that is. I know that you were talking earlier about compensation. You know, you were concerned about what it was going to cost people to do things, you know, like upgrade their fire alarm system and that type of thing. And I think that those are prudent conversations. So what this would be is, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the city would ask for in a case like this.
Well, I'm not sure you're going to get any concrete answers tonight because this is informational only, but.
Those are all questions. Those are all questions. I'm just putting them out there.
Yeah, no questions off base, but I'll go to Councilmember Walsh since he's got the blue light
I guess
going.
that my first question is the title insurance company. I mean, is there involvement with the title company there? It seems like that they should be, sounds like a screw up on their part too, that perhaps they should be held.
Well, your head's where my head was, because that's the second call I made, was to the title company to find out what their inclusions were. And one of the exemptions was that they were, yeah, I know. If they would have had an Alta policy where a surveyor went in there and surveyed the place, those cost, quite a bit of money to have an Alta policy, is what she told me. You should have paid more money, got an Alta policy and made sure that was there. Because I know when I sell subdivisions to these national builders, they all have Alta title companies. Boy, they check everything. If there's a fence encroachment or a blade of grass that's out, they're all over it. But in this particular case, that wasn't done.
Okay, we'll start down at the far right, Councilmember McDaniel, and we'll move this way.
Actually, so I have a question you probably not gonna be able to answer today, but we did hear it's been known for a while, but no one's told us like when that came up to be. So I'd be curious to know like, when did we first find out this was an issue? And the second one is, what's the city's long-term plan for this area? So, I mean, those would be the two questions that in the future I'd like to have more information on.
Okay, I can't answer the first one or the second one, so
Yep,
maybe
I know.
your staff can, but yeah.
We'll get them though.
The second one, so Poverty Bay Park is located behind that. That is master planned by the Parks Department. This is the road to get into the park. So it is contemplated to be built out as a full road into a park.
That's gonna be part of the giant map. I got the booklet on it, so it's gonna be
Yeah.
part of the plan. Okay,
Yep.
I'll look through that then.
Yeah, it's in there.
Hey, Deputy Mayor Honda?
Thank you. So if we were to agree with this vacation, would that have a negative impact on the park? And when are we planning, just out of curiosity, even to develop the park?
I definitely don't know the answer to the second question. The first question, that is part of the review process that has to follow this meeting of what the impacts of that would be. I don't believe they're known at this point.
So from tonight, getting this information, what are the next steps? What can the applicant expect and what can we expect as a council to how this will go?
So the next step is the petition process. So it's circulating it to every adjoining property owner and getting responses from them at the applicant. We have standard forms that they all have to be notarized by the applicants and the property owners around the property. And then they submit a full application addressing all of the stuff that I went over in my PowerPoint presentation. And then it goes into staff review. So it'll be a while before this is back before council. So that review will at least at a high level be done, and then, we can have a conversation of if council wants another briefing once that high level's done before we go back to the applicant, or how exactly that plays out. Council has a lot of discretion in that. But those are kind of the next three steps.
So we're talking 6 months, 12 months?
A lot of it depends on the outside agencies. So, I mean, we have to submit everything to PSC, Lake Haven, Metro, and Comcast, every other utility. So we're a little bit at their whim of when they get back to us. So if any of those agencies take 6 months, it'll be more like 12. If they turn around it very quickly, it would be less. But that's a little bit outside of our control.
So let's say one of the neighboring properties doesn't agree with this. Does that have an impact on?
It does. So to advance the petition process, they need to have 2/3 affirmative. If 2/3 of the property owners that touch this parcel, which I believe is only them and one other property owner off the top of my head, do not approve of advancing this conversation, it dies. If there is not concurrence, so if they get 2/3 majority, and then, if there were 3 property owners for conversation's sake, and the third property owner dissented, I mean, that would be conveyed to council. They would certainly have multiple opportunities to come before council and tell you why. But it could advance with 2/3 approval.
Okay, thank you.
Deputy Mayor, Council President Kuchar,
Thank
sorry
you, Chair.
about that.
So it appears to me that we're part of the oops because we gave the certificate of occupancy. We did the final inspection. So we have some ownership in what's happened here, it would appear to me. But my question really is, for the park, for a 50-foot right-of-way, would that accommodate 2 vehicles? Or, because it was originally 80-foot right-of-way, which would be 40 feet each side, so.
So you can certainly get two-way street and 50-foot right away. I think the question becomes, do we do like sidewalk on one side and,
Oh, my goodness, we
Not-
don't have sidewalks anywhere around here.
or a
Right.
path on just one side? You know, that is part of what we need to look at as we go through this process,
So
though.
one thing we might do with this other house at 30420, possibly enter into negotiations with them to purchase 30 feet of their property, which the property owner could do.
I believe the last time this was discussed with the applicant, that was the direction of the city, was to approach that property owner and see if this could be shifted.
We did approach, sorry, I'm not the owner, but I work for the owner. So we did approach the next door owner.
Do you want to go to the?
Introduce yourself.
My name is Alexei and with Urban Design Group, and I'm representing the owner. And we did approach next door neighbor, and we tried to go with easement purchasing, and it was just a no-go from their end. Either because it's English, their second language. We tried multiple options, multiple ways, meeting in person, sending the letters, phone calls. It just didn't go anywhere, and that's where it went. And first, and then to answer the first question somebody asked before, when did you find out? When we all found out about this? It was certificate of occupancy, and I think a month later, it was somebody approached the city and notified the city about it. So it was not we didn't know about it as a party of the ownership, and nobody knew, city didn't know. It was just some outside person, not related to this project, came up to the city and notified the city about this. So yeah, ironically.
So legally, would be a legal question. Legally, isn't the city responsible? Because we've issued the certificate of occupancy.
Yeah, I don't want to speculate hugely because I don't know the exact specifics of that permit process that went on. I will tell you that generally, when you're issuing a certificate of occupancy for a building permit, you're not checking for surveyor markers and for that type of stuff. You're checking to see if it's been put together properly and meets the building code and things like that. So that's not generally something the city would look for. Beyond that general statement, though, I really need to know more about this, talking to Scott in particular with the building department about exactly how the timing went to see if there's an issue there.
Thank you.
Councilmember Walsh?
Yeah, just, I think we can safely assume that it's still the original owner there, correct? Yeah, I don't see any way it could have been sold otherwise.
Title
so,
company
but
would have picked up
anyway,
on that.
So, if it was sold, I mean, hey, there's some beautiful swampland in Florida too,
Yeah.
so anyway. But I guess my question with the Poverty Bay Park, and this will probably be a better question for John and maybe answered later on, but is that plans that it would be a developed park or more a natural area park? Any?
You're testing my memory here, but if I remember correctly, it's to go into a trailhead and be more in line with like West Hyblos, Brook Lake, where there's an upland portion that is developed, and then the rest is more like running trails, bike trails.
Okay.
But I know one of the big focuses of that park is to get access to the sound for residents. So I mean, it is a fully developed park that's proposed.
Okay. And then I think the one thing for the sake of I feel for the applicant. I mean, they're in whoever screwed up, that puts the applicant in a tough position. And I think that it's only fair to the applicant to, as soon as possible, to give them a realistic idea of whether it's actually doable or not, because they're going to be, I would hate them to be sinking all the money into all of this, and then a year and a half or 24 months from now or whatever, we say, well, hey, we love you, but this isn't going to work. And so, I think that that there should be at least a reasonable expectation of it working in order for the applicant to continue the process. Does that make sense? I'm not sure who I'm addressing that to, but.
I saw you looking our direction. Yes, that does make sense. I will just say, however, that in order to figure out what the right answer is in terms of whether we will maintain the public trust, the public benefit, the only way to know that is to do the analysis in the first place. So in this way, it is a bit similar to a land use application in that you don't know if you can build your building on your property that has a wetland on it until you've done the wetland studies, figured out if the buffer can be reduced, and figure out if you can place the building there. So it's a little hard to prejudge prior to doing the media analysis that's required. So yes, we should not be, chasing one of these down a rabbit hole when there's no chance that it would ever be approved. But there is substantial analysis that we need to do to figure out if the required criteria can be met.
Okay, yeah, and that's what I don't want him to be doing it if there's not a chance that it'll be approved in the end anyway.
I think
But
if this
as long
was-
as there's a reasonable possibility of approval.
I think if this were a request to completely vacate the entirety of the 80-foot wide of the right-of-way, that would probably be a different discussion, right? Because then that would completely block any public access whatsoever to a planned future park, right? So that would probably fit into that, definitely a no-go box that you're talking about.
Okay, and I'm assuming there is no other access to this park.
There's two.
It's designed,
Other access.
it's designed as 2 accesses into this park.
There's 3 total. There's 3 access points total. There's 2 dead-end roads that abut the property to the north, and then there's this one that comes in from the south. The question, I guess, before all of us tonight for transparency is to the Public Works Director, will a 50-foot right-of-way satisfy the needs of the public for the future potential use of that park? That's the big question. If the answer is yes, then we can move forward with this. If it's no, we need all 80 feet, then it's have a nice night. See ya.
And unfortunately, that's the question I think we don't
Yeah.
know the answer to yet. That's the question that needs that further analysis. Staff hasn't even essentially looked or started that analysis at this point. That's going to be something that will happen upcoming. Once
Yeah.
we've done that, we'll have a better answer to that question.
Okay, and I would just encourage staff to with the analysis, if things look dim, to let the applicant know right away, to know whether they want to continue to expend funds on that. And I agree. I mean, hey, the cities, as I see it, has some responsibility here as well, but maybe we're not supposed to be saying that, but it's the fact.
Say what you want.
Or from my perspective anyway, so.
Is there a possibility for like a pre-application meeting for this that is where all the parties that are involved can answer the question of whether a 50-foot right-of-way will suffice? Could we have a meeting where we could leave with that answer?
So that is part of the process that was
Okay.
on that slide.
Okay, great.
So before I go to, I'm going to ask a question before I go over there. Because you all asked a question. When I look at this map, where the pool is and the outbuilding and all the things further down on your map, are those on within the property line, or are they in the park also? I mean, it looks like a pool or a circle or.
Those are all within the property.
I mean, when I look at your map right here, you have all this down here.
That's on their property.
This is part of their
Yeah,
property?
Their house,
Okay.
house comes out like this right here. This is the house.
Yeah, I figured, okay,
It's like 17.
okay.
Yeah, Chair, the parcel line is so far back that you can't even see it on this map.
Okay, I was just curious. And then the parcels that are, the parcels of the building that are onto the side, onto the pavement, are those actual walls and enclosures, or are they overhangs?
The asphalt itself?
Yeah, the asphalt I get, but then you
Yeah.
have the overhangs over the top. Are those like
That's-
parking structures that go over, or are they actually part of the house?
It's physical building.
Physical building?
It's physical building count.
Okay. And-
It actually varies between 11 feet and 17 feet, depending
Okay.
upon. So just picture the front of your house and take off 17 feet.
Okay, got it. And then, I remember years back, we had this same thing happen on this park. You know, a landowner improved their land and went into the park. Does that have any precedence or any way into this thing?
So a street vacation, I mean, each one stands on its own merits and, is ultimately a council-specific decision. The pool that you're referencing was actually on the fee simple part of the park, which was kind of why it was.
Was it the same park though, wasn't it?
It was the same park, yes. But it was on the fee simple part, not the right-of-way part. But yes, you are correct. We required that a property owner to have it removed.
Okay, thank you. Lydia, your turn, and then we'll go to Mr. McDaniel and then Ms. Honda.
Thank you so much. I just looked up both houses on Redfin, and the 30420 looks like it's on the market. So, and I don't know if you know that, but is that something? Is that a conversation?
Yeah, that's a conversation, all right. It might be on the market, but it can't be sold until this is remedied. So that that was one of the exclamation marks that came with this whole process, was that they can't sell it until its original owner can't sell it until we resolve this one way or another. So, yeah.
So maybe, like someone suggested, moving the right-of-way towards their property. This may be a good time to,
Council members talking about the house on the other side of the right-of-way.
Yeah.
That's currently for sale.
30420, yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I did want to note for the council, there is actually a sliver of another parcel in between the right-of-way and that house that you see at the 420 address. So the house that's at the 420 address isn't directly next to the right-of-way. There's actually a small sliver with a different owner in between.
Really?
The Public Works Director might address this too, but when you do shift right-of-ways like that, there's some alignment challenges that you have. And so I'm not sure, there's intersection spacing and all kinds of other things to consider with that too. So I'm not sure what that would look like. That could be investigated, I guess, as well, but Public Works Director would know better.
Okay, Mr. McDaniel?
Two questions, again, they're more generally to our guys. I'd be more curious, not knowing if 50 feet's required, but what the maximum footage we would need to get the entry in there, and then once we have that, kind of determining where we need to slide. And the other one is, if this doesn't go forward and people, whatever way you get shot down, what ends up happening? Is that a required tear down then? Or, I mean, what's worst case scenario?
So there's a couple different options there. And I'm not sure if you meant to ask a really complicated question, but you succeeded. The short version is, yes, the city could require it to be torn down effective immediately. We actually could do that now if we wanted to as a city. The other, I think, probably more practical option would be that it could remain until such time that the city develops it, and then it would have to be removed at the owner's cost at that point. Would be a second option, but immediate vacation or immediate removal from our right-of-way is certainly permitted. We have done that throughout the city where someone builds an illegal fence and obstructs trails and everything else, where we have told property owners they have 72 hours to remove it. So in theory, we could do the same thing here.
I take it those guys probably didn't go through the proper channels the same way.
You would be correct.
Okay, I figured that much.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Honda?
Thank you. So I'm trying to figure out the timeline. It was built in 2012, occupied probably shortly after that, 2013 or whatever. And since that point, the owners and the city have known that this was an issue. and it's just now, 10 years later, coming to the city council?
I think this has been looked at more than once, according to Mr. Elliott here. I just got a briefing with him this morning, and then, or later this evening, but, yeah, this is not an easy deal. This isn't like you build on your neighbor's property or something and you wind up in Superior Court. This is a deal where, you built on public property. It's a whole different world, and there's a whole different criteria that you have to meet and discuss before a decision gets rendered, really. I just appreciate, the city's patience in this, because it has been a while, and Mr. Dovey brought up a good question about property tax. I never thought about that, but that's a good one. So what, what's to be done is a huge question mark, really, for everyone. Public Works Director isn't sure yet. We need to talk with Parks. There's a lot of players involved in this to see if that full 80 feet is needed, number one, and if it's not, and a 50-foot could be used, then what do we do? Is there other compensation that the applicant has to make, to the city for that?
Well, I guess what I would like to try to understand is why we haven't resolved it earlier than this, even as complicated as it is. And if I was the applicant living in a house that I didn't know if I was going to be able to live in it for as long as I wanted to, I can't sell it, I would have wanted to move this along a little faster. I feel sorry for them living under a cloud of uncertainty.
Yeah, it's a real catch-22, I mean, do you deal with it head-on, and then that opens up a whole new can of worms? Or do you just forget about it, live there until the city comes by and attaches a note on your door saying, oh, by the way, in 72 hours, we're gonna cut your house in half? I mean, what do you do? I mean, really, if you were in that position, it's really, I'm sure, uncomfortable for everybody, not just the city. The fortunate part is the city isn't putting pressure on them because they need that right-of-way. They're not building out the park right away, and everyone tonight that spoke about it said, we don't know when the park's gonna be built out. There's no plan for that yet. And we don't know if 50 feet is gonna be enough. So really, until those questions can be answered on this side, we really, aren't sure how to proceed forward.
And I think, Deputy Mayor, an important thing to note is that the street vacation process is entirely applicant-driven. So it's incumbent upon the person who needs the street vacation to put together the signatures required and to come to the city to apply for it. And I think we've heard today that there have been some efforts that didn't go very far in the process in previous years with respect to doing that, but the city isn't in the business of bulldozing houses in the right-of-way generally, so the city's not been, I think it's fair to say the city's not been active in enforcing this for that reason, but it's still incumbent on the property owner to come in and submit the application to make things right, essentially.
Okay, thank you.
The Public Works Director outlined the procedures, the policies, the procedures for this, and I do a lot of land use applications, and this is not an easy one at all. There's a lot of unknowns moving forward. There's nothing really in concrete here, other than the burden of proof is on the applicant to make sure that, that the public trust is safeguarded.
Okay,
Chair.
one last question.
I would just say that I think that this member of the council, anyway, would appreciate a recommendation from from staff on what type of compensation would be appropriate and what would satisfy that public trust. Now, not now, but at a future point.
Absolutely, and that's part of that process. So to the attorney's point, so the applicant is the one to initially propose that, when we get to that point, and then that gets reviewed by staff, and ultimately a recommendation comes to council from staff with the applicant's package as to this meets or this does not meet. So yes, your point's well taken, and we'll get there.
All right, thank you.
Could you go to so we can hear?
Just one more thing to add. At some point, if you look at the right-of-way map, south piece of this property between Marine View Drive and Dash Point Road, somebody already reduced the right-of-way. So if you look at the next lot over from the 28th, it's not on that map, but it's probably deeper down in the process. You can look at it, somebody already reduced the right-of-way to probably by 10 feet or so. So somehow somebody was able to get there. I'm not sure how it went through the city council or it went to some other routes, but it definitely is smaller than 80 feet at this point. Just want to let you know.
Okay, Councilmember Walsh?
Sorry about one more, but where is the property line on the other side? I mean, it would be possible to just move the right-of-way to the other side of it looks like there's space between those houses, but I don't know where the property line is there.
Yeah, I think you heard a little bit of Councilmember Asefa Dawson suggesting that would, of course, require either the private citizen to be able to negotiate with those property owners to get that property.
Well, what I was referring to is this property itself, how much room is there on the other side of the house on this?
Oh, I see what
this
you're saying,
thing on
to move it
applicant's
to the
property?
north side of the house. That is a potential thing that, again, we could potentially analyze as part of the process. That could be an alternative, right, to change the right-of-way to be on the other side as opposed to this side. We'd have to figure out if that worked for street alignment purposes and other stuff. So.
Right, okay. No more questions, sorry.
I got one last question. Regardless of what happens, this is all gonna come down to money, probably. I mean, if we were to vacate it, the owner of the house is gonna have to buy the land somehow to pay the
That's
trust. I mean,
correct.
I mean, this is not like, just do it. I mean, there's gonna be some sort of fair market cost for the land and,
Yes.
and all that, so.
At the end of the day, if the public trust is met, then yes, it's
Yeah.
appraised and
Got it.
goes through that whole process, and yes, they have to purchase it.
And then they could come back and go, wow, I didn't know that land was $1 million, tear my house down, or whatever it is. I mean,
Correct.
But, okay,
Well,
thank you.
just like I said, for the sake of transparency, I just moved a espresso stand from the city of Bonnie Lake down to South Hill, Puyallup. We actually physically moved it. It wasn't huge, but anyway, 2:00 in the morning and got all the permits and brought it down. And this week, I'll be contacting those people who moved that to find out what it would cost to move this house, because this is a crazy application here. And it may be more prudent, cost-effective to do that. It may also be more prudent, like you say, to move the right-of-way over if we can get the proper alignment from agreement from Public Works. So there's a whole bunch of options here, and none of them are good. So anyway, we just need to, I guess for transparency again, inform this body that this is where we're headed, and appreciate all the questions.
Thank you very much for your presentation and your time, and I'm sure we'll see each other many more times here. And now, probably our most favorite topic, item H, the Sound Transit update.
Good evening.
At least it's the most consistent. It's been on every meeting this year.
Most consistent, yes.
10 years to come.
Okay, good evening. Kent Smith with the Public Works Department, the Sound Transit Liaison for the city. I'm here to present for the activities update for the City of Federal Way for Sound Transit. So as far as north of 317th Street, still continuing with landscaping, noise wall construction, systems duct bank, ballast installation, OCS installation and testing, fencing, MSC wall construction, and then rail delivery, installation, and welding, as well as some finished work for the signal house and traction power substations. I think they're getting ready to start power up for one of the two signal houses, so making a little bit of progress there. For the city center, two-way traffic on 23rd Avenue has been restored, at least temporarily, for the moratorium period. Additional concrete roadway and sidewalk work continues, so both for 23rd Avenue and 317th. Roadway work for the new internal roads is ongoing, streetlight foundation, sidewalk preparations, as well as there's sewer, water, and additional utility work for 317th and 23rd, and some of the new internal roadway network. Station work still ongoing with plumbing, electrical, mechanical, elevator work, fire line work, and ceiling panel installation. Construction of the garage, similar work. They got plumbing, HVAC, electrical, communication, and fire protection rough-in. And end-of-line facility, they're doing interior work with ceiling installation and trim and some of the finish work, so they're getting a little bit closer with that one. I don't have anything significant for the operations and maintenance facility south. We're continuing to collaborate with Sound Transit staff on some of their design elements and looking at a NEPA-SEPA final EIS publication in mid-2024, still on schedule. Similar for the Tacoma Dome Link extension. Nothing significant so far, but we're looking at mid-2024 for their DEIS publication. And I'll answer any questions.
I see no questions, so. I think this is the first time. Oh, wait, Lydia, I see one down there.
Had to get one.
So with the OMF property, I was informed that the Christian Faith has been informed or got a letter.
Yes, they've gotten approval already through FTA to do negotiations for that property as far as purchasing it. They got preliminary approval, essentially, for property negotiations.
So if they're to vacate in 2 years, is there a plan to do anything with that property within that time frame? Because otherwise it could become an eyesore if it's just vacated and there's nothing if it's not being used for anything. So could they continue use? It's just me asking because we've seen that happen in the past.
Oh, okay. Cole just informed me that there's potential for a lease back in place if they buy the land so they can use it before they actually need to do anything.
Thank you. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Honda.
Thank you. So does that mean that all of the properties then have had a letter saying that their property is going to be purchased?
Not all of them yet. They only had, from FTA, they, as far as I've heard, which I guess this may be not quite up to date because I think this was a couple weeks ago. They had not received approval for purchasing any of the other properties as far as OMF South goes, until either FTA gives them approval or they get the decision to build from Sound Transit Board.
Have they decided how they're going to go under the power lines?
I believe the solution is the power lines are going to be raised, and then that allows them the correct clearance that they need in order to fit underneath.
Does that impact the view of Mount Rainier from the PAC? And if it does, can we stop it?
I'm not sure on that. They stay essentially in a similar location. I think one shifts slightly, but the second one actually just gets taller. So I'm not sure.
Yeah, my recollection of the view polygon that's delineated in code is that there isn't a physical tower that's within the protected view. It's just lines, as in power lines that are there. So maybe not, but I'm not sure about that. As to your second question about whether our view protection ordinance could prevent that if there is an impact, I don't think so. I'd have to do a lot more research to figure out for sure, but my inclination is that we'd be preempted from prohibiting a federal agency from relocating their power lines into a different location. So even if we tried to, we couldn't. That's my initial take on that, but not entirely sure yet.
Huh? Yeah. All right, and on the public art for The station, the Federal Way downtown station, do we have any more information on that?
They're still holding with, I believe it is beginning of the year, they'll start some of the exterior work for the garage, for the artwork on that. Otherwise, a lot of the other pieces are still pending some more development of the core area. And I don't have any updates on the Donald Lipsky art as far as a new conceptual imagery, other than what we've already seen.
It's still going to be a lamp?
As far as I know, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, seeing no more questions, we'll adjourn for the night. Thank you.
Thanks.